Guys, I think it's time we actually read the books on our TBRs. Like most people with a Goodreads account, I have quite a toxic relationship with my TBR. I intensely love bomb it. Like if a YouTuber mentions a book they like, it's on there. If anyone mentions any book, if I see an advert, I'm like, yeah, that looks good. Onto the TBR you go. And it's causing some problems. I don't know if you can hear that. That's my washing machine and I'm very sorry. In this video, I'm going to choose the 3 worst books on my TBR, according to Goodreads that is, and I'm looking forward to it. First though, let's talk about what we're accompanied by. So it's the morning, in case you couldn't tell, my eyes are very puffy in the morning, so I don't know what that claw was. We've got ourselves some buttered hot cross buns. I really like to spread my butter really badly, so it's in these like lumps. Favourite way to do it. Matty hates it, but it brings me joy. And I've got this big old icy coffee. Honestly, life is pretty good right now. First up, with a modest 3.56 stars, is Sally Rooney's Beautiful World, Where Are You? I'm feeling very apprehensive about this because I've never read any Sally Rooney. The closest I've got to Sally Rooney is I did watch Normal People, the TV show, a few weeks ago, and I didn't love it. I thought elements were amazing, but I didn't find the characters, or at least their interactions, that believable. I feel like it was just held together by sex scenes. Maybe that's a bit harsh. I think I was a bit confused as to why people shipped Connell and Marianne. Anyway, this one I don't actually know much about at all, other than the fact that it's like her lowest rated one. I feel like it's relatively divisive. I know that it's about a group of friends, and the Beautiful World, Where Are You thing comes in because they sort of worry, like they got a lot of worries and they're worried. And that's all I know, that's all I know about this book. But Jack Edwards seemed to really like it, and I actually, in his review, he specifically said a mature departure from her previous work, which I hope is like a bit of a reference to Normal People, because if there's like a more mature version of Normal People, I'm like, maybe I will like that, you know? Next up, I'll be reading Bunny by Mona Awad. So this book is another one that was raved about, and I know even less about this one. It's actually a horror, which I've only just found out. I don't really read horror. I mean, I recently read Frankenstein, but I imagine this will be quite different. And I'm kind of excited, to be honest. I get a little bit scared. Like I don't watch horror movies because I get a bit scared, so I'm hoping this like isn't too scary. It's about a student called Samantha. She ends up being kind of sucked into this clique of preppy rich girls that call themselves Bunny. It's like a bit of a horror Mean Girls, is my interpretation of it. The final book on my list is The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, which I find quite amusing because it's like the opposite of these books. Like a really intense classic. I don't know how much people know about Curious Case of Benjamin Button. All I have in my mind is Brad Pitt. It's set in the mid 1800s. This guy gets born an old man and then spends the rest of his life reverse aging. It's by F. Scott Fitzgerald, so the Great Gatsby author, and I'm really intrigued because I really liked The Great Gatsby. I read it a while ago now, but I just remember it being like so readable, and I just really liked the sentences. I know that's like what makes up a book, so that's not a very like astute observation, but I just really liked the words and the way the sentences were structured, and I just thought it was like so riveting and delicious. So I'm intrigued to see like how much of that is in The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. But yeah, it's meant to be one of his iconic books, despite being rated 3.57 on Goodreads. Wish me luck. I'm gonna get started on this. See you soon. I'll let you know like as I go along. Yeah, is that a good idea? Guys, I just finished this book and I really enjoyed it. Oh, it's upside down, sorry. Quick tea check actually. This is just standard builder's tea with a bit of milk. So cheers if you're having tea too right now. So my first Sally Rooney book, and I really like, I need a bit of advice. Like I want to know, should I read any more? because I did really like this book. I thought that the writing was so intelligent and it had a really fun combination of kind of long, waffly, slightly intense, I don't want to say intellectual, what's the word? Just like slightly philosophical passages, but then it also had some really nice kind of little scenes with descriptions and good dialogue, and it just felt very, very real and kind of well described. It follows a group of 4 people: Alice, Eileen, Simon and Felix. Eileen and Alice are old uni friends, and the book is split into writing scenes, as I said, and dialogue, kind of normal book narrator voice, and then you also have quite frequently letters between Eileen and Alice, and the letters are incredibly long and they go on quite waffly tangents. They did lose me sometimes, just a little bit, but I did think it was quite like an interesting way to mix it up, and I enjoyed them, and it kind of helped you understand the characters of Alice and Eileen better. So the other 2 characters are Simon and Felix. They are the kind of male love interests. They're pretty different people, and Simon has known Eileen for pretty much like their whole lives, and then Felix is someone that Alice met on Tinder, and the opening scene is a Tinder date between Alice and Felix. So it's a pretty enticing opening chapter. So yeah, it's this really nice writing style that I was surprised by. And then another thing that Sally Rooney does is she doesn't put quotation marks around dialogue. And what I found really interesting is that I really enjoyed that. I didn't actually find it very hard to get into, because I guess when you think about it, dialogue is so different from like normal prose, because you see words like I and you, and the phrasing and the pacing is just really different. So it's usually actually incredibly clear when someone's talking, and very quickly I sort of got into that style and I found it easy. In fact, I actually almost preferred the non-quotation mark dialogue style. It felt very appropriate for the rest of Sally Rooney's writing. Let me just try and describe this well. She loves a good detail. She describes facial expressions and tiny movements and little kind of folds in someone's clothing and these kind of details. She describes them very intentionally and she describes them very well. And what I enjoyed about the lack of quotation marks is that it sort of showed how the details and the kind of little descriptive bits were just as important as the dialogue. Like this idea that what is not said is just as important as what is actually being said. And from my impression of her, that feels like a really big part of like what her books are meant to be about. It's all about these details, these small unspoken interactions. And I think especially like communication issues is really classic and something I actually find frustrating from Sally Rooney's work. But this kind of style, not having quotation marks with dialogue, it really like magnifies that and it really gets that across. I'll be interested to like read up on this style because I don't really know anything about it. I haven't watched any interviews from her, so I'm going to be like quite intrigued as to whether any of my opinions get validated. All in all, just a really lovely, gentle writing style, a really enjoyable experience reading this book, and I was very pleasantly surprised. So now on to Bunny. Hey guys, I just finished Bunny and I absolutely loved it. As in I literally just turned the last page. Look, I'm in, oh, sorry about that, in my little blanket. This book was confirmation that Goodreads reviews can be really flawed, because I can see why it's probably quite controversial. Like some people probably don't like it and other people absolutely love it, so it ends up with 3 stars when really for some people it's a 4 or a 5. I know that's the case for a lot of books, but I think some it happens in quite an extreme way. So this book for me is definitely like a 4-star. The main character is Samantha. It's told through her point of view, and she goes to Warren University, which is a very prestigious, very expensive university, and she's doing the postgrad writing course. Is postgrad so she's doing like a graduate course, so she's done her undergrad, this is the postgrad. I don't know if that's just like a UK term. Anyway, there's this group of girls that call each other Bunny, who are insufferable, like very cutesy. And that's the opener. The opener is this event where she's got her friend Ava with her, and they're kind of bitching and moaning about bunnies. And the next day in the post, Samantha gets a letter that's basically the bunnies inviting her to their next sort of mysterious cult event. The book just gets crazier and crazier from there. It definitely descends into a bit of a madness spiral, difficult to predict what's going to happen, and it's also sometimes a little bit unclear. You know, there are a lot of questions around like what's actually happening. It's a little bit abstract in places, but I actually really enjoyed that, and especially because it's from the point of view of Samantha, I really liked how they portrayed the uncertainty. And there are a lot of metaphors and slightly weird ways of describing certain things. You have little italicized bits, and the italicized bits are meant to be thoughts or words that she kind of wants to say but doesn't, and it just creates a really readable, interesting style. Yeah, so I really enjoyed the book, and I have been very pleasantly surprised by this one. I actually haven't really read many kind of culty books, and this has inspired me to read more. I think they're quite fashionable at the moment, like with Don't Worry Darling and a lot of like popular Midsummer, basically everything that Florence Pugh has done. And it's kind of making me want to read more of them, but equally I don't know if I can handle like too many of those kind of books. But yeah, I don't know, I'm gonna have a look into it because I've enjoyed myself. Anyway, on to The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, which is, I guess, quite like fantastical and a little bit strange from what I've heard. So we're still keeping the books strange, but I think it will probably be quite different. Hello, I have just finished The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, and it's so funny because it's 27 pages long and it took me longer to finish than like any of the other books, because I think in my head I kept being like, it's really short, it's so short, you can just read it right now. And another part is that in reality I didn't love it. I was expecting a little bit more, especially considering that The Great Gatsby is a book that I really enjoyed, but I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, because first I want to give a little bit of clarification around my feelings about the book Bunny. So just a quick moment, a moment of your time. So I described how Bunny was quite confusing, and lots of like twists and turns and things like that, but I want to clarify, because it's a very important distinction to me, that when I said it was confusing and there were twists and turns, I didn't mean it made it hard to read. Like, it was actually very easy to read. I didn't feel myself kind of, ooh, the neighbour's cat has just sat in the sun. That's really sweet. Anyway, I didn't feel myself having to reread bits. I didn't feel myself feeling confused by the book or overwhelmed. Like, any points of confusion or ambiguity I thought were quite intentional and were kind of the whole point of it and were part of the plot. So I just wanted to make that point, that like, yes, twists and turns, yes, confusing, but that shouldn't be something that puts you off. It wasn't kind of confusing bad, it was confusing good, confusing makes you think, confusing has a point. Okay, so next I'm going to talk about the final book that I read as part of this video. For those of you who don't know, sorry, that's my laundry in the background. The book surprised me. I'm glad I've read it, because when you hear it's so famous, I haven't actually watched the film, but it's such a famous book and it's a short story, so I would still say it's kind of worth reading, just because I was intrigued and there were quite a few things that were sort of different to how I thought it would be. Like, a lot of people in his life seem to kind of blame him for his condition and get quite angry at him, so it feels like a bit of a sad story, but then equally the way that it's told, you feel very strongly that, you know, moral of the story is more about enjoying your life and kind of taking each day as it comes. And it's like, yeah, this guy had a really weird thing happening to him that would have really brought him down, but his attitude was quite, he just lived for the moment. I did enjoy that. Like, it was there was a nice little moral of the story there. So it was like an interesting book, but it's definitely my least favourite out of the 3 that I've read. But yeah, that's how I felt about that. I obviously like try not to spoil the books that I talk about, and I'm trying to work out like how to do that on BookTube. And still trying to get the hang of it. I think what I'm going to start doing, because there are some books where I want to talk about the spoilers, so I might start making more videos like that, but they're going to be focused on one book, and it'll be clear that I'm going to spoil some things. Other than that, I really enjoyed making this video, because it's really shown to me how Goodreads reviews should be taken with the biggest pinch of salt ever. I think we always knew this, like a 5-star rating system is always going to be limited. I've enjoyed learning that lesson. I've enjoyed reading these books, and I've also managed to grind through a bit more of my TBR. So thank you for watching. I hope you've had a lovely week. I hope you have a lovely next week, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.